Hi everyone, my name is Kaisi. I am so excited to be talking about the Great American Songbook today. It is one of my personal passions. We're really going to be diving into two parts. So we're going to be talking about the Great American Songbook and then what I like to refer to as the Great Forgotten Songbook. We're going to talk about kind of what is the Great American Songbook, and then also what is the Great Forgotten Songbook? What might you expect to see in similar videos on my channel? All of that fun jazz, pun intended. So I am a huge fan of both the Great American Songbook and the Great Forgotten Songbook. I am obsessed with how the music feels so classic, but relevant at the same time. It's a really interesting reflection on American culture through time, and I absolutely love both. Let's be real, it's fun. I like the music. It's a blast and a half to listen to this jazzy, upbeat, really fun music. It feels like, yeah, it's from a different era, but it feels so different from so many other types of music we have today. And I greatly enjoy it. Ultimately, though, it's really emotionally impactful. You have these amazing torch songs that live with us forever, but you also have these really cheeky tunes. Like, it's just so funny. There's so much comedy. And I think it's so much fun. I just really, really enjoy listening to this music and also studying it, because with something that's almost 100 years old, there's, of course, a lot of it that you're going to understand, and some things that you're going to have to delve into a little bit deeper. Certain things are not going to be obvious at first without kind of digging in, doing some research. And I kind of nerd out about it. I'm a little obsessed. I find the history absolutely fascinating and am so happy to get to kind of share this with all of you. It feels like every time I take another look at material from the Great American Songbook, from the Great Forgotten Songbook, from anything from this time, really, there's always so much more to learn, even though it's been around for nearly 100 years. It's like what's old is new again. So, without further ado, let's delve into some history and kind of look at these two really significant concepts. So, what is the Great American Songbook? Ultimately, it is influential American pop and jazz standards from the early to mid 1900s. It is important to note it's not an actual songbook. There's no one list of what may or may not be included. Instead, it's talking more about an era of music. It spans a couple different genres, which we'll talk about in the future. But it's really about the era of music, known for timeless melodies, memorable lyrics, and enduring cultural relevance or influence. Now, there is kind of a standard sound that's associated with the songbook. It's not necessarily a specific genre, but at the same time it is. Think about a bunch of classic standards kind of geared towards that musical theater Hollywood vibe, except for that it was also popular music. And so both popular music and show tunes were included. But a lot of it did have that same sound, which is important to note as you look at trying to figure out whether something towards the beginning or something towards the end of the songbook is really part of the Great American Songbook or is transitioned into a different genre. It is also important to note that definitions of the time period of the Great American Songbook can vary based on the source. But various sources could include tunes from as early as the late 1800s to even as late as the 1960s, which is really weird to think about. It's kind of a wide span of time, especially for something that you say Great American Songbook and it has such a specific association. Yet, at the same time, It's really broad. We're talking about at least 50 years of music. More, depending on your exact definitions. Technically, it could be as many as, goodness, 1895 till, like, what, 1964? That's like 70 years. So imagine talking about a span of musical theater history and music history in general, as if we are talking about the difference between, goodness, now I have to like do math and think about the years. So right now we are in still kind of the early 2020s. So let's just round back a little bit. Eras are kind of vague. So let's say 2020 to 2000 is 20 years. And then yeah, so let's say we're talking about the same span of time as potentially 1960 until today. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the Great American Songbook, right? Like that big of a time period. So it is pretty vast. If we think about it, if we were to define an entire generation of popular music, not just one generation, again, we're talking about a significant length of time. We're talking about this equivalent of 1960 to today. Again, that's massive. That is massive. It's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to define the Great American Songbook. So, the Great American Songbook is known for its classic standards that have been performed over and over again by different people and different generations. Like, think of the difference between Sinatra and Michael Bublé. Sinatra was recording more in the 60s, Michael Bublé is more modern, but yet they're both still recording songs from the Great American Songbook, right? These songs have been recorded time and time again. Other artists, or Peggy Lee even, did so many from the Great American Songbook. Linda Ronstadt did a few. There are infinite examples. One of the other things that's important to remember is some of the amazingly renowned composers and lyricists that were part of this time period. George Gershwin, Irving Berlin, Cole Porter, Jerome Kern, Johnny Mercer, Dorothy Fields, and so many more. There are, again, talking about a massive time period. Hi, buddy. But talking about a massive time period, like the Great American Songbook, means obviously there are a lot of artists. Think about how many artists, again, have been popular from the 1960s until today. There are also a lot of composers. Now, music was not as accessible or readily available in some ways. Not everybody could create a hit song in the same way that you technically could today, although the market is, again, completely different ballgame. But the accessibility in recording technologies wasn't there. The versatility of being able to mass distribute something was just being developed during this era. Which means there are a million composers and lyricists. But to be fair, maybe not quite as many as we'd associate with modern times. The songbook, once again, is known for its enduring popularity. It remained popular over the decades and continues to be performed and recorded by contemporary artists, and it appears in different formats. Sometimes someone might do a rock cover of a Great American Songbook song. In my head, I always think a lot of these would sound so great on ukulele. I don't play ukulele, but it would be a lot of fun. It would be a vibe. These songs also had massive cultural significance. Again, we are talking about such a wide span of time. It greatly reflects the cultural and social history of the United States during the 20th century, especially, again, the first half of the 20th century. And of course, with it being such a wide span of time and such a prominent part of music of the era, it had a profound influence on American and global music. It served as a source of inspiration for countless musicians and songwriters, both in the decades past and today. It's, again, a wide period of time that led to the creation of many genres we now enjoy. Without the Great American Songbook, music wouldn't have developed in the same way. Let's talk about some examples from the Great American Songbook. For example, there is Summertime by George Gershwin. It was a 1935 American opera called Porgy and Bess, and it was insanely significant. It was technically an opera and is one of the only more classical pieces of music that would be considered part of the Great American Songbook. But the level of influence and cultural significance of this musical cannot be understated. There's also Fly Me to the Moon by Bart Howard. It was originally performed by Kay Ballard in 1954, which makes it a little bit more clear-cut as part of the songbook, even though it was made popular in the 1960s. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard this song at karaoke. It speaks to the cultural significance of the Great American Songbook. I know you might think, oh, is My Way part of the songbook? My Way, again, I wouldn't consider it to be so. It was created a little bit too late, but it definitely has a lot of the other markings of the Great American Songbook. And it's another one that, again, enduring, culturally significant. You hear it all the time now. Another example of a song from the Great American Songbook that is very culturally commonly known today would be Over the Rainbow. Over the Rainbow was by Harold Arlen and Yip Harburg from The Wizard of Oz, shocker, in 1939. And so, again, songs like Over the Rainbow and Fly Me to the Moon that are still very commonplace to hear today were part of the songbook. It again speaks to the massive cultural significance of this era of music. These songs and many others continue to be celebrated and cherished by music lovers worldwide. They were essential songs that still resonate today. No wonder I'm a little obsessed. So we talked about the Great American Songbook, but I promised the Great Forgotten Songbook as well. What is the origin of this term? The Great Forgotten Songbook. Let's be real. I don't know if anyone else calls it this. It's a term that I associate with songs from the Great American Songbook era that maybe weren't as popular. Maybe they were by the famous composers of the time, but were cut from a show and weren't made common knowledge. There are so many songs and so much rich material that still feels so relevant that isn't necessarily thought of or remembered today. So, the standard Great American Songbook, yes, it's popular, long-standing. It's like the greatest hits albums of any of your favorite artists. Like, I know I have a greatest hits from Pink. I have one from the Beatles. I love greatest hits albums. It's great. Like the Great American Songbook. It's the greatest hits are the ones that are known, are considered standardly part of the songbook. But the Great Forgotten Songbook is like the less popular songs by the same popular artists. Or in some cases, like the songs only released on a deluxe version of one specific album. Or they're songs that maybe were written by a popular artist, but were never released to the public. I find this absolutely fascinating. Think about having the opportunity to listen to your favorite artist's songs that were never released. Like, what would someone pay to listen to Taylor Swift's vault of songs she's never put out? Kind of a lot, right? And yet, through the years, we have a treasure trove of songs that are just like that from eras past. These are the Taylor Swift's vault of the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. I mean, yes, a little before, a little after, you get the picture. But imagine if in 100 years from now, your great grandkids had the opportunity to open up Taylor Swift's vault of songs she never released, or songs that everyone forgot about. I would encourage them to do that. Wouldn't you? That would be great. Who wouldn't want to do that? And so that's what we're doing with the Great Forgotten Songbook. Imagine like Norman by Adam Ant. It's only available on his Extra Wonderful album. And it's an expanded version of his 1995 Wonderful album. I love the song Norman. Just like Norman was from Adam Ant, George Gershwin had Come On and Kiss Me. It mostly appeared in just one single musical review. It was called The George White Scandals of 1920, and The George White Scandals was a series of musical reviews that changed every year. They were typically more of the launching pad for artists' careers rather than producing hits in and of itself. And so, another example, like Madonna had Borrow Time on the super deluxe version of her 2015 Rebel Heart album. Cole Porter had There's a Fan, which was ultimately cut from the 1938 musical and also later movie, Leave It to Me. The song is absolutely hilarious, but try as I might, it sounds like the sheet music was never published. The best I could do, the Library of Congress has a copy of the lyrics, but there's no sheet music. It wasn't published. There might be someone with a copy that maybe was passed down from somebody who performed it or got it originally, but these were never mass produced. It wasn't published. You're not going to readily find a copy of this. And this show was Mary Martin's Broadway debut. Mary Martin, super important, culturally significant actress on Broadway in movies of the time. Her Broadway debut was Leave It to Me. And yet, we have no way of getting the full song of There's a Fan, which was cut before the show opened. Imagine the cultural significance of being able to track down the full song. Now, okay, I know about this because I'm a bit of a nerd. I found out about this because I have this series of albums from Ben Bagley, the Painted Smiles albums, and so there is a recording in existence of this song. But if you want to do it, you can't. You can't. You'd have to play it by ear. You can't get music for it. You can play it by ear, though. It's kind of great. Very sassy. How did I get interested in the Great Forgotten Songbook anyway, right? Like, it's kind of super specific and pretty niche. There are so many reasons to be interested in general, but how did I even get into it? So, like many good things, I came into contact with it at first, thought nothing of it, moved on with my life, came into contact with it a second time, and the rest is history. So the first time I actually came into contact with a work from the Great Forgotten Songbook from my first voice teacher. She had handed me a piece that was a discovery. One of the things that's good to know about the Great Forgotten Songbook, the Great American Songbook in general, is there were massive issues with documentation at that time. Just like how now there's major concerns about video game history. At that time, there were massive concerns with not documenting or storing, honestly, old movies, old sheet music, old film, old theater material. And so, in 1982, there was a discovery of a box in the Warner Brothers archive. It was a box that was initially supposed to have been thrown away years before. But in this box, there were tunes, sheet music, actual sheet music by a lot of these amazing Great American Songbook composers, much of which was completely unknown music at the time. It was not officially published, it was not distributed, and all of a sudden, we had a brand new treasure trove available. And so my first voice teacher was kind enough to have me learn a piece of music from this Warner Brothers archive discovery. Let's be real, I did not know what it was at the time. I knew it wasn't a song people were talking about. She mentioned that it was a less common tune, which I thought was really cool, right? Like, oh, I'm singing something not super common. I love that. But I didn't realize quite what she'd given me. And so a couple years later, I was reading a book and I stumbled across a recommendation to look into the Ben Bagley's Painted Smiles albums. So of course I did. I found it interesting. I was digging the book, and so I did take the recommendation. I looked up the Painted Smiles albums, ordered my first one, and oh my goodness, am I glad I did. The music is uniquely fascinating and paints a cultural landscape of America through the era, even beyond the music that was able to get popular. It's a sharing of ideas, thought processes, what people wanted to put out there, but maybe got cut for one reason or another. Also, let's be real, it's fun. It's fun. It's like a treasure hunt. Some people refer looking at the forgotten material from one specific composer as coal mining, if you're looking at the material of Cole Porter, for instance. I'm not the only one in the world who's done this. I just am particularly passionate about it, and hope that you might be too, because it's really interesting. It's a treasure hunt that we can do anytime. Thank you so much for listening to the end of this video about the Great American Songbook and Great Forgotten Songbook. It's something I hope to talk more about in the future, because once again, every time I look at this again, I seem to learn something totally new or draw a new comparison to something happening now that really enriches my understanding. If you want to learn more, please subscribe. I'm going to keep posting some videos that delve a little bit deeper, and ask any questions in the comments. I will answer the best I can. And if you want to see some of my work, click here. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.